What if forgetting your keys is just the beginning of forgetting yourself? What if these little slips, losing a name, walking into a room and feeling lost, aren't just aging, but warnings? Warnings your brain is sending quietly, soft cries for help, before it starts to shut down piece by piece. Brain, if you're over 60 and these moments feel familiar, don't ignore them. Because dementia doesn't begin with forgetting birthdays. It begins much earlier, when small things start to feel just a little off. Like forgetting common words, losing your sense of smell, or suddenly feeling unsure in your own home. Backhand index pointing right before you scroll past. This may be the video that protects your memories, your independence, and someone you love. Direct hit in just minutes, you'll discover 9 early signs most people completely overlook. 13 symptoms often mistaken for just aging. And science-backed ways to protect your brain now, while it still matters. Pushpin plus. One strange signal your brain may already be sending that most doctors miss. Red heart if this video helps. Tap like or subscribe. It truly means more than you know. Backhand index pointing right, let's begin, before it's too late. What dementia really is, and what it's not. We've all had those moments, forgetting a name, losing our train of thought, or walking into a room with no idea why. But what do they really mean? What is dementia, and what isn't it? A lot of people think dementia is just memory loss. But that's only part of the story. Dementia isn't a single disease. It's an umbrella term for changes in the brain that interfere with daily life, memory, decision-making, language, even personality. Think of your brain like a symphony. Each instrument, your memory, reasoning, focus, playing in tune. But then, a few notes go off-key. At first, it's subtle. Then it grows. And eventually, the music changes. The most common types of dementia include Alzheimer's disease, the most well-known, often starting with memory loss and disorientation. Vascular dementia, linked to poor blood flow, often after strokes. Lewy body dementia, causes vivid dreams, movement issues, and hallucinations. Frontotemporal dementia, affects personality and behavior, not just memory. And no, dementia is not a normal part of aging. Many people stay sharp into their 80s or even 90s. But dementia is different. It doesn't just take your memory. It can change how you speak, walk, eat, and feel. It can sneak in, wearing the disguise of just getting older. So how do you know what's normal and what's not? That's where we begin, with the 9 early signs almost everyone overlooks. Backhand index pointing right and stay tuned, because right after that, we'll cover 13 classic symptoms that many families miss until it's too late. 9 early signs of dementia that often go unnoticed. 1. Trouble finding the right word. Imagine trying to describe something as simple as a spoon, but instead saying, that thing you eat soup with. You might pause, struggle, and rely on vague phrases like, you know what I mean. While this happens to everyone occasionally, in early dementia it becomes more frequent, even disruptive. These aren't just forgetful moments. They're misfires in the brain's language center. And the frustration that comes with it. Feeling like a word is right on the tip of your tongue, but just out of reach, can lead to anxiety or avoidance of conversation altogether. Brain, why it matters. Language difficulties often show up early in dementia, especially Alzheimer's. It's not just about forgetting. It's about your brain struggling to find its voice. Lightbulb tip. Keep a note of how often this happens. If you or a loved one regularly substitute common words or feel anxious in conversation, it's worth discussing with a doctor. Try keeping a small word journal where you jot down repeated struggles. This log can be helpful in early diagnosis. Counterclockwise arrows button. Next up, strange shifts in your senses, like losing your sense of smell, could quietly be pointing to deeper cognitive changes. If you or a loved one regularly substitute common words or feel anxious in conversation, it's worth discussing with a doctor. 2. Senses getting strangely dull. Food tastes different. Perfume smells weaker. You have trouble hearing in a restaurant. These sensory changes are often overlooked, but they may signal more than just aging. In many dementia cases, the part of the brain that processes sense input begins to deteriorate before memory does. Some people lose the ability to recognize smells like coffee, vanilla, or even smoke. That's not just inconvenient. It can be dangerous. Nose-reel example. Some seniors with early dementia can't smell spoiled food or smoke from a burning pan, which increases health risks at home. Light bulb what to do. Track whether changes affect enjoyment, safety, or awareness. A loss of smell has even been linked to Alzheimer's years before diagnosis. If you find that multiple senses seem off, talk with your doctor. In the meantime, label foods and double-check expiration dates. Your bonus tip: if your hearing or smell fades alongside memory changes, don't write it off. These brain processing centers may be sending you an early signal. Footprints coming next. What happens when the hobbies you used to love suddenly feel like a chore? Let's explore the next quiet shift you shouldn't ignore. A loss of smell has even been linked to Alzheimer's years before diagnosis. 3. Losing motivation for things once loved. Maybe you used to read daily, tend your garden, or paint. Now you don't feel like doing anything. This isn't necessarily depression. It could be an early sign of dementia-related apathy. The motivation systems of the brain can lose their spark, making familiar activities feel pointless. Unlike sadness, which carries emotion, apathy is a hollow stillness. It feels like knowing you should care, but just don't. Even beloved routines feel distant, like you're watching your life from behind glass. Artist palette watch for this. When joy feels muted and hobbies feel like chores, don't brush it off as laziness. It's your brain's internal drive taking a hit. Light bulb try this. Gentle routines, music, and social engagement, even in short bursts, can help reignite lost interests. Start small. Water a plant. Call a friend. Listen to an old favorite song. Little sparks matter. Next track button, next sign. What if the way you move, buttoning a shirt or tying your shoes, starts feeling off? The next symptom could explain why your hands no longer keep up with your thoughts. 4. Subtle muscle weakness and slowed movements. Tasks like brushing your hair or buttoning a shirt suddenly feel awkward. You're not sure why, but your fingers feel slower. These signs may come from impaired brain signals that control coordination. Dementia isn't just about thinking. It affects movement too. The brain's connection to the muscles, especially those responsible for delicate movements, can weaken subtly at first. You might notice tremors, fumbles, or even slower walking speed without realizing why. Open hands real-life clue. Dropping utensils more often, writing becoming less legible, or struggling to tie shoelaces could all point to neurological changes, not just age. Light bulb tip. If fine motor difficulties appear alongside forgetfulness, don't ignore them. Occupational therapy may help, and it can be a clue to vascular or Lewy body dementia. Magnifying glass tilted left coming up. Have you ever gotten turned around in your own neighborhood, or felt oddly disoriented somewhere familiar? Our next sign could be your brain's GPS starting to fail. Occupational therapy may help, and it can be a clue to vascular or Lewy body dementia. 5. Getting lost in familiar places. You step out to pick up your mail, and suddenly feel unsure how to get home. Or you pause in a grocery aisle trying to remember where you parked. These moments can feel surreal, like stepping into a fog within your own mind. This is more than just being distracted. It's called spatial disorientation, and it's one of the more unsettling early signs of dementia. The brain's internal GPS, usually so reliable, starts to glitch. Compass why this matters. It's not about memory lapses. It's about the brain misplacing your position in familiar spaces, even when you've lived there for decades. Light bulb tip. Keep visual cues around the home, like color-coded doors or hallway signs. Avoid driving alone if this becomes frequent. When outside, Use GPS even for familiar trips. And if walking, go with a friend or caregiver. Crescent moon next up. If your nights are restless and your days filled with naps, it could be more than insomnia. The next sign explains how dementia may be rewriting your internal clock. 6. Sleep habits turning upside down. You nap all day and wake up confused at 2 a.m. You feel energized at midnight but sluggish at noon. This isn't just poor sleep hygiene. It may be your brain's internal clock, the circadian rhythm, falling out of sync. Dementia affects the hypothalamus, the part of the brain that regulates sleep-wake cycles. That's why sundowning, restlessness, or agitation in the late afternoon is so common. What to look for. Difficulty falling asleep, waking multiple times, vivid dreams or nightmares, or reversed sleep patterns. Light bulb helpful habit. Stick to a strict routine. Same bedtime every night. Dim lighting after sunset. No screens 1 hour before sleep, and no caffeine after noon. Morning sun exposure can help reset the body clock. Cyclone and next. Have you noticed changes in the way someone walks or moves? Shuffling steps, small strides, or unexpected stumbles? The next sign reveals how dementia might quietly affect mobility before memory. 7. A change in how you walk or stand. Do you notice shorter steps? A slight shuffle? Maybe your stance feels less stable than before. These changes often sneak in, so subtle they're easy to miss. But research now shows that walking style, or gait, can change years before noticeable memory decline. That's because the parts of the brain that coordinate movement, like the basal ganglia and motor cortex, can be impacted early in neurodegenerative diseases. Person walking warning signs, shuffling, stooping, slowed reaction time, or hesitation when turning corners. Even slight unsteadiness could be your brain signaling distress. Light bulb observation. Ask someone to film you walking. Even subtle shifts may become obvious when watching yourself. If these changes appear alongside forgetfulness or confusion, talk to a neurologist. Chart decreasing next clue. You followed a recipe for decades, so why now does the microwave seem confusing? The next sign highlights how daily tasks can suddenly feel like puzzles missing pieces. 8. Simple tasks becoming complicated. You've done it 100 times. Toast the bread, make coffee, pay a bill online, but now it takes longer. Maybe you skip a step, or you reread the instructions 3 times and still feel unsure. This breakdown in processing isn't about intelligence. It's about how dementia disrupts the ability to plan and sequence. For some, it starts in the kitchen. For others, in handling money or navigating a TV remote. You know what you want to do, but your brain feels one beat behind. Wrench what to watch for. Struggling to follow a familiar recipe, trouble setting an alarm clock, or needing repeated reminders for simple routines. Light bulb support tip. Use written steps for routines. Label drawers and devices. Break tasks into smaller chunks. Don't wait for a crisis to intervene. These changes can escalate quickly without structure. Puzzle piece up next. One of the most painful signs isn't physical, it's emotional. When someone starts pulling away from conversation, it can feel like they're disappearing before your eyes. Let's explore why that happens and what you can do to help. 9. Withdrawing from conversation. You sit silently in a group. You avoid phone calls. Conversations feel fast, and you get lost mid-thought. This withdrawal is often misread as shyness, but may reflect early confusion, frustration, or even fear of embarrassment. It's like being in a room full of noise where your brain just can't keep up, and the easiest thing to do is retreat. This sign is one of the most emotionally painful for loved ones to witness, when the once talkative grandparent now sits quietly in the corner. Speaking head what it feels like, words blur together. You want to respond, but feel like you're always one step behind. Even small talk feels exhausting, like wading through wet concrete. Speech balloon for family and friends. Don't assume they've lost interest. Try quiet, one-on-one chats. Sit beside them instead of across. Use memory cues like photos, songs, or familiar stories. Listen without correcting. Lightbulb, try this. Slow-paced, one-on-one chats can rebuild confidence. Don't interrupt or correct. Use photos or mementos to spark memories. Let silences breathe and listen more than you speak. Bell, looking ahead. In the next section, we'll explore the 13 classic symptoms of dementia, some of which are commonly mistaken for normal aging. What you'll learn next could help someone you love get help in time. 13 classic symptoms of dementia you should never ignore. 1. Disorientation in time and space. Have you ever looked at the clock and thought it was morning, only to realize it's already afternoon? Or stepped out the front door and suddenly forgot what day it was, or where you were heading? This isn't just being forgetful, it's a loss of internal GPS. For many older adults in the early stages of dementia, this confusion grows quietly, like fog rolling in. It's not just about time, it's about feeling misplaced in your own life. Someone might wake up in their childhood mindset, think their spouse is still alive, or confused decades. These moments can be disorienting, embarrassing, and even dangerous, especially if someone wanders outside and can't find their way home. Hourglass, not done. Real-life clue. An older adult wakes up at 3 a.m., gets dressed for work, though they've been retired for 10 years. Compass, helpful habit. Place large, easy-to-read clocks and calendars in every room. Use verbal and visual cues throughout the day. Good morning, it's Thursday, or time for lunch now. Lightbulb, smart strategy. Use automatic lighting to simulate sunrise and sunset indoors. Morning coffee brewing or soft evening jazz can act as time anchors. Pushpin, coming up next. When once simple tasks, like managing bills or cooking dinner, become overwhelming puzzles, it could mean the brain's problem-solving center is breaking down. 2. Difficulty planning or solving problems. You used to handle the bills, plan birthdays, or balance the checkbook. But now, those tasks feel like deciphering a foreign language. Even following a simple recipe or remembering the next step in a phone menu becomes mentally exhausting. This isn't laziness or age. It's a sign that the brain's executive function is faltering. What's really happening? Early dementia begins to affect the frontal lobes, the part of your brain responsible for logic, planning, and sequencing. You may notice your loved one struggling with organizing their day, calculating change, or staying focused on multi-step tasks. The frustration builds, not just for them, but for the people around them too. Lightbulb, real-world scenario. A senior tries to make their favorite stew, but forgets halfway through whether they added the potatoes or not, twice. Bar chart, what helps? Break tasks into tiny steps. Instead of make lunch, try boil water. Add pasta. Set timer. Visual checklists with pictures work wonders. Brain support tools. Use large wall calendars, to-do boards, or even digital assistants like Alexa that can verbally walk someone through routines. Simple timers and pill boxes with alarms can also help maintain independence longer. Puzzle piece, next insight. Sometimes, it's not what someone forgets, it's where the forgotten thing ends up. Let's talk about objects in very odd places. 3. Putting things in odd places. Imagine opening the freezer and finding your keys next to the frozen peas, or spotting your reading glasses inside the microwave. At first, it seems funny, just another quirky senior moment. But when this behavior becomes frequent, it may signal that spatial memory and object association are breaking down. Brain, why it happens. Dementia can disrupt the hippocampus, the brain's filing cabinet for organizing and retrieving memories. When this system falters, the brain misplaces where things belong, or forgets the purpose of an object entirely. That's why someone might put laundry detergent in the refrigerator or hide cash in tissue boxes. Crying face, emotional impact. Even more distressing, the person may become suspicious or even accuse others of stealing, simply because they have no memory of moving the item themselves. This can create tension and fear in relationships. Light bulb real-world clue. A loved one insists their caregiver took their wallet, only to find it days later stuffed into a shoe in the closet. Package helpful routine. Establish homes for frequently used items. Use colored bins, baskets, and clear labels. Pictures are often more effective than words. Video camera support tools. Small indoor cameras or motion sensors can help families identify behavior patterns without confrontation. This is especially helpful in spotting repeated hiding or hoarding behavior. Pushpin coming up. The next change isn't about what people do. It's about who they seem to become. A shift in mood or personality might mean something deeper than a bad day. The next change isn't about what people do. It's about who they seem to become. A shift in mood or personality might mean something deeper than a bad day. 4. Mood and personality changes. You knew them as calm, kind, even silly. But now, the smallest things set them off. A misplaced sock, a light left on. Or maybe it's the opposite. Someone once bubbly and lively now sits quietly, staring at the wall. These aren't just bad days. Dementia can subtly, then dramatically, alter mood and personality. Brain, what's going on? The disease starts to interfere with the limbic system and prefrontal cortex, regions of the brain that help regulate emotion, social behavior, and self-control. That's why you might see uncharacteristic anger, paranoia, fear, or apathy. Light bulb real-world clue. A once gentle grandmother snaps at her granddaughter for offering help, then immediately forgets the interaction and acts confused by the tension. Red heart, what helps? Stick to familiar routines and environments. Avoid overstimulation. Loud crowds, flashing lights, or sudden changes can heighten distress. Blue Book care tip. Keep a journal. Track mood patterns, triggers, and times of day when agitation peaks. This helps caregivers and doctors respond with compassion, not confusion. Speaking head gentle approach. Instead of saying, "You're being rude," try, "Let's take a deep breath together." Validation calms far better than correction. Pushpin next sign. Even body signals get lost. When incontinence appears without a clear physical cause, it may be the brain's signal pathways breaking down. Even body signals get lost. When incontinence appears without a clear physical cause, it may be the brain's signal pathways breaking down. 5. Incontinence without physical cause. An increase in bathroom accidents, especially when paired with confusion, can indicate a deeper cognitive issue. The brain may no longer recognize the body's signals clearly or forget where the bathroom is. Toilet support tip. Keep pathways to the restroom clear. Install easy open clothing and consider bathroom reminders. Light bulb smart idea. Use motion-sensitive night lights leading to the toilet. Place easy-to-recognize restroom signage on doors. Pictures work better than words for visual memory. Crystal ball next insight. What if you're seeing people or animals that aren't really there? Hallucinations might be one of the clearest signs something in the brain has shifted. 6. Hallucinations. Seeing people, shadows, or objects that aren't really there, particularly at night, can be terrifying. It's most common in Lewy body dementia, but can appear in Alzheimer's too. These visions are very real to the person experiencing them, even if you can't see them. Brain, what's going on? Hallucinations often arise from disruptions in the brain's visual processing center and emotional regulation areas. The brain starts to interpret things that aren't actually there, especially under stress, low lighting, or fatigue. Fearful face emotional effect. Hallucinations can cause fear, paranoia, or even aggression, especially when the person believes what they're seeing is threatening or unfamiliar. Speech balloon, how to respond. Don't argue. Instead, meet their emotion. Say, "I see you're scared. Let's sit together." Or gently redirect their focus with music or a calming activity. Crescent moon soothing strategies. Remove mirrors or cover them at night. They may confuse reflections. Dim lights can cast eerie shadows. Add soft, consistent lighting. Avoid dramatic movies or loud news at night. Hibiscus natural support. Lavender aromatherapy or soft instrumental music in the evening can lower stress hormones and reduce hallucinations. Pushpin coming next. Let's dive into one of the most classic, but misunderstood, symptoms. The quiet erosion of short-term memory. Asterisk asterisk, what happens when someone forgets what they ate 5 minutes ago, but still remembers their childhood vividly? Let's explore the loss of short-term memory. 7. Short-term memory loss. They might vividly recall the name of their childhood dog, but can't remember what they had for lunch an hour ago. This is one of the most widely recognized signs of dementia, but it often starts so subtly that families dismiss it as just aging. Brain why it matters. Dementia damages the brain's hippocampus and nearby structures, which are responsible for creating and retrieving new memories. That's why someone might repeat the same question again and again. It never stuck the first time. Repeat button real clue. What time is dinner? Asked 5 times in 10 minutes. It's not stubbornness. It's a loop caused by fading memory formation. Clipboard how to help. Keep reminders visible, sticky notes, whiteboards, or electronic alerts. Repeat information gently, with the same calm tone. Avoid pointing out they just asked. It only adds shame. Television home adjustments. Consider memory-friendly items like talking clocks, automatic pill dispensers, or scheduled voice prompts from devices like Alexa or Google Assistant. Pushpin up next. What if the memory gaps grow bigger and start affecting names, faces, or places? Let's talk about long-term memory loss and why it's so emotionally painful for families. 8. Long-term memory loss. Losing track of short-term memory can be frustrating, but when someone starts forgetting names of loved ones or doesn't recognize their childhood home in photos, it hits deeper. This stage can be devastating for both the individual and their family. Brain what's happening. Dementia spreads into the brain's temporal lobes and beyond, damaging areas that hold decades of identity, history, and deep emotional connection. That's why someone might look at their daughter and think she's their sister. Broken heart real-life impact. A man sits at a family reunion, smiling politely at strangers, unaware there is children and grandchildren. Books carrying strategy. Use photo books labeled with names or family trees on walls. Introduce people by saying, "This is your grandson, Jake, who loves fishing like you." Light bulb, keep connection alive. Play familiar music from their young adult years. Often, songs unlock memories better than pictures can. Pushpin coming next. When someone stops grooming, forgets meals, or leaves the stove on, it's more than forgetfulness. Let's talk about daily life skills breaking down. 9. Losing the ability to complete familiar tasks. Imagine walking into your kitchen, ready to cook your favorite soup, only to forget how to turn on the stove or which pot to use. For many seniors facing early to mid-stage dementia, these once simple tasks suddenly become foreign, confusing, even frightening. Brain what's happening. Dementia affects the parietal lobes and parts of the frontal cortex that handle motor planning and sequence recall. The brain's wiring for how to is slowly unraveling. Even brushing teeth or operating the TV remote can become a frustrating mystery. Repeat button real-world clue. A retired mechanic who once rebuilt engines can no longer figure out how to start the coffee maker or get stuck halfway dressing. Soap, what helps? Break every routine into clear, repeatable steps. Demonstrate slowly. For example, instead of saying brush your teeth, try hold the brush. Put on toothpaste. Now brush in circles. Puzzle piece care tip. Use visual cues, sticky notes with pictures, color-coded labels, or numbered steps taped beside the sink or stove. Video tutorials of their own voice can also reinforce the sequence. Shower safety tip. Install automatic shut-off valves on stoves and water taps. Use clothes without buttons or zippers. Speech balloon caregiver mindset. Be patient. Avoid saying, "You just did that wrong." Celebrate progress, not perfection. Pushpin next up. When words get jumbled or conversations feel like puzzles, it's time to explore how language begins to fade and what you can do to stay connected. 10. Challenges with language and speech. Ever feel like a familiar word is right on the tip of your tongue, but it just won't come out? For those with dementia, that feeling happens all the time. Words become slippery, and speaking can feel like trying to thread a needle in the dark. Brain why this happens. Language centers in the left side of the brain, like Broca's and Wernicke's areas, are disrupted. This means the ability to find words, form sentences, and understand what others are saying slowly deteriorates. Speech balloon real clue. A senior might call a watch a hand clock or substitute words altogether, like saying book food instead of menu. Open book helpful strategy. Don't interrupt or correct harshly. Instead, gently offer the word they're looking for. "Oh, you mean the microwave?" This keeps conversations flowing and reduces frustration. Speaking head care tips. Ask yes/no questions instead of open-ended ones. Use gestures and facial expressions to add clarity. Speak slowly, with warmth. Puzzle piece visual aids. Keep labeled photo albums. Use picture-based communication boards, or try apps that help bridge language gaps. Light bulb important note. Don't mistake silence for lack of thought. Many with dementia still have deep insights. They just can't get them out. Pushpin up next. What happens when someone stops recognizing their own reflection or forgets their own family? Let's talk about confusion around people and places. 11. Confusion about people and places. It's a jarring moment when a loved one looks at their spouse or child and asks, "Who are you?" Or when they walk into their own kitchen and say, "Whose house is this?" These are not fleeting moments. They can be terrifying windows into how dementia blurs not just memory, but identity. Brain the brain behind it. Damage to the temporal and parietal lobes, where the brain stores facial recognition and spatial awareness, leads to this kind of confusion. The familiar becomes foreign. Even the reflection in the mirror can seem like a stranger. Broken heart real-life example. A grandmother sees a wedding photo and asks, "Who's the man next to me?" Not realizing it's her late husband of 50 years. House with garden home adaptation tip. Keep family photos labeled and displayed around the house. Add signs to important rooms like kitchen or your bedroom. Avoid mirrors if they cause distress. Busts in silhouette communication tip. Reintroduce yourself gently. "Hi, Mom. It's Anna, your daughter. I'm here to sit with you." Speak calmly, with warmth. Touch can help anchor a sense of familiarity. World map cognitive support. Memory books, name badges, or short daily video greetings can help reinforce relationships and surroundings. Pushpin coming next. What if someone suddenly starts showing poor judgment, like giving away money to strangers or wearing winter coats in summer? Let's explore how decision-making starts to fray. 12. Poor judgment or decision-making. You notice your loved one tipping a delivery driver $100 for a $20 meal, or stepping outside in freezing temperatures wearing just pajamas. These aren't one-off mistakes. They're red flags that the brain's judgment center is under attack. Brain, what's going wrong? The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that weighs consequences, manages risk, and regulates impulses, begins to deteriorate in dementia. This leads to choices that seem irrational, unsafe, or out of character. Money with wings real clue. A senior suddenly starts buying multiple items from late-night TV ads, or wiring money to strangers who sound nice. Dress other signs. Wearing inappropriate clothing for the weather, ignoring traffic while crossing the street, or becoming overly trusting with strangers. Light bulb helpful tools. Use prepaid cards with limited amounts, or set alerts for large transactions. Add layers to daily outfits so the person can adjust without needing to choose from scratch. Stop sign protective strategies. Create a safe zone at home. Lock up hazardous items. Simplify choices and remove tempting online shopping access. Clipboard caregiver tip. Don't scold. Say, let me help you decide what's safest instead of why would you do that? Your tone makes all the difference. Pushpin final warning sign coming up. When someone pulls away from friends, family, or hobbies, it might not be disinterest. It could be the earliest sign of emotional withdrawal caused by dementia, like giving away money to strangers or wearing winter coats in summer. Let's explore how decision-making starts to fray, or forgets their own family. Let's talk about confusion around people and places. Let's talk about daily life skills breaking down. Let's talk about long-term memory loss and why it's so emotionally painful for families. 13. Withdrawal from social activities. Once a social butterfly, your loved one now avoids church gatherings, skips their weekly bridge game, or stops calling their best friend of 40 years. This isn't just aging introversion. It's a potential red flag that dementia is interfering with motivation, memory, or confidence. Brain why it matters. The frontal and temporal lobes, responsible for social behavior, language, and emotional regulation, begin to atrophy. This can cause a person to feel overwhelmed in group settings, embarrassed by their memory slips, or unable to follow conversation threads. Speech balloon real-world clue. A once outgoing neighbor stops showing up for community events, and when asked why, they shrug or say, I just don't feel like it anymore. Pensive face, the hidden pain. Many individuals withdraw because they're aware of their decline. They fear saying the wrong thing, repeating stories, or feeling out of place. The result is isolation, and it worsens cognitive decline. Puzzle piece helpful ideas. Invite loved ones to small, familiar settings. Use gentle structure. Let's go to the park at 10, then lunch. One-on-one visits are often better than large groups. Telephone receiver reconnecting tips. Help set up simple video calls. Bring along old photo albums to spark conversation. Recreate comforting rituals. Tea on the porch, music from their youth. Lightbulb caregiver encouragement. Don't force socialization. Instead, find moments of joy in small things, a shared laugh, a remembered lyric, a smile at a familiar scent. Pushpin coming up next. Let's shift from symptoms to solutions. What can be done to delay dementia, or even prevent it? Science offers real hope. Proven strategies to prevent or delay dementia. Staying mentally sharp isn't just about luck. It's about consistent care for both body and brain. These research-backed strategies can help protect your cognitive health well into your later years. 1. Control blood sugar and diabetes. High blood sugar doesn't just affect your heart. It damages the brain's delicate vessels too. Keeping diabetes under control can reduce your risk of vascular dementia and slow age-related brain changes. Lightbulb tip. Aim for steady, moderate meals and a diet rich in fiber, healthy fats, and whole grains. 2. Quit smoking for good. Smoking shrinks blood vessels, restricts oxygen to your brain, and accelerates decline. It's never too late to quit. Even seniors in their 70s and 80s see brain benefits within months. Stop sign reminder. Brain fog doesn't have to be permanent. Cut off the smoke, and you give your neurons room to breathe. 3. Get your blood pressure and cholesterol in check. High blood pressure silently damages arteries throughout your brain, leading to memory loss. Keeping numbers in a healthy range helps preserve cognitive function. Clipboard simple steps, regular exercise, reduced salt intake, and medications if prescribed. 4. Challenge your mind daily. Use it or lose it. Crossword puzzles, card games, learning new skills, or even switching up your daily routine keeps the brain agile and builds cognitive reserve. Brain mental exercise can be just as important as physical movement. 5. Stay socially active. Isolation isn't just lonely, it's dangerous. Seniors who stay socially connected have lower rates of dementia. Telephone receiver, join a group, volunteer, or simply call a friend each day. Your brain loves company. 6. Sleep better, live sharper. Poor sleep interferes with memory consolidation and brain detox. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of quality rest nightly. Sleeping face evening tip. Avoid screens before bed and stick to a relaxing routine, warm bath, light reading, or gentle music. 7. Eat a brain-boosting diet. The Mediterranean diet, rich in olive oil, leafy greens, fish, nuts, and berries, has been shown to lower dementia risk. Green salad, swap processed foods for whole ingredients whenever possible. 8. Stay physically active. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain and supports memory. Walking just 30 minutes a day can make a difference. Running shoe movement equals nourishment for your mind. Pushpin next. Let's talk about the future of dementia treatment. What breakthroughs are giving families hope? New Hope, Indiana Dementia Research. We're entering a new era of understanding the brain. Scientists now see dementia not as one single disease, but a spectrum. And with that comes targeted treatments. Test tube medications under development. New drugs aim to slow plaque buildup, improve brain cell communication, or protect neurons from inflammation. Microscope blood-based biomarkers. Imagine diagnosing Alzheimer's with a simple blood test. That dream is fast becoming reality, allowing for earlier, more accurate intervention. Brain neuroplasticity breakthroughs. Therapies that retrain the brain to bypass damaged circuits are showing promise, even in older adults. Video game digital tools, brain training apps, virtual reality, and cognitive coaching tools are part of the new front lines in brain care. Pushpin up next. Let's end on a note of empowerment. What does the future hold? And how can you take action today to stay strong tomorrow? Key takeaways and final thoughts. At the end of this journey through signs, solutions, and scientific hope, here are the most important lessons to remember. White heavy checkmark awareness is everything. The earlier we recognize the warning signs, the more time we have to respond with compassion and care. White heavy checkmark, you have more control than you think. Small lifestyle changes, healthy food, better sleep, regular walks, staying socially active, can protect your brain and delay decline. White heavy checkmark, community saves memory. Isolation is dangerous, but connection is healing. Talk, laugh, share stories. Keep your brain and your heart engaged. White heavy checkmark, there is hope. Science is advancing. Treatments are coming. And most of all, we now understand how to fight back with knowledge, love, and daily habits. Bell, if this video helped you understand dementia better, please support our mission at Senior Health Tips. Thumbs up, give us a like if you found this valuable. Speech balloon, share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Envelope with arrow, leave a comment with your questions or experiences. We read and respond to each one. YW checkmark, and don't forget to subscribe to Senior Health Tips for more weekly guidance on staying sharp, strong, and independent after 60. Together, we can age smarter and with dignity.